From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
He wants to go from the head of the City Council to the head of City Hall. City Council President Michael Solomon has entered a packed primary where, as of now, there could be as many as 5 Democrats on the ballot come September. The next mayor will inherit an underperforming public school system, a tight budget, and a pension system that is still critically underfunded. This week on the first half of Newsmakers, our guest, candidate for mayor of Providence, Michael Solomon. Then, he has been a political survivor. Ralph Mollis has made his way from the grassroots of city politics in North Providence, eventually serving as mayor, to the State House as your Secretary of State. Now he's looking to move down the Marble Hall and be the state's next lieutenant governor. This week on the second half of Newsmakers, Democratic candidate for lieutenant governor, Ralph Mollis.
Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the program, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi. Good morning, everybody. City Council President, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So look, you have a pretty powerful elected position as it stands right now in Providence. You hold sway over policy issues, and you have a lot of influence. So why mayor?
Listen, I have the experience to be the mayor, and I'm ready for the job. 3 years ago, the city was under crisis. I had just become council president. Angel Tavares had just became mayor. And immediately we had to tackle a $110 million deficit. It wasn't easy. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of tough decisions had to be made. But we made those decisions. And I'm proud to say today we have a $1.6 million surplus. But you know, our job's not done. We still need to continue the momentum moving forward. But we have to have a vision for the future of the city of Providence. I was born here. I was raised here, raised my family here, started my businesses here. Providence is my home. But we need to make Providence a city of opportunity for everyone. And this means we need to invest $250 million to rebuild our schools. And rebuilding our schools is going to create 2,000 jobs and improve the quality of life in our neighborhoods. And that's why I'm running for mayor. Schools, jobs, and neighborhoods.
Well, I want to talk about that $250 million that you want to borrow for the schools if you become mayor. I just did a story that Providence has the highest per capita debt in the state. And the city in fiscal 2012 had $583 million primarily in general obligation debt. Is it a good idea to slap on another $250 million on top of that?
First of all, some of the debt you're talking about was unfunded liability to the pension system.
The $583 million is not. I'm not even including the pension in that.
We're going to do this in a responsible way. We're going to do this over a 10-year period because we'll have some money coming off the books, $30 million coming off the books in the next 10 years. We're going to get 80% funding from the state. The city will supply 20% investment. And so we'll do it over a 10-year period. We'll do $50 million immediately to make our schools warm, safe, and dry. And then we'll put a plan together over the next 10 years to start rebuilding our schools. This is something that needs to be done. I mean, some of our schools were over 100 years old. The other day I had the opportunity to go to Kazarian Elementary School. And I walked in and the principal was there and somebody from the school board was there. And I could the smell, tiles falling off the wall. There was some paint peeling. Ceiling tiles had to be replaced. And I walk into the gymnasium, and right in the middle of the gymnasium, there's staging going right up to the ceiling. And I realize it's holding the roof up. The kids can't even use their gym. I mean, it's not conducive for children to be learning in that type of environment. Our kids deserve first-rate schools, and we have to start somewhere. So, I mean, we'll do it in a fiscally responsible way. I mean, I've talked to our internal auditor. I've talked with our finance advisor, Gary Sass, and this can be done. This can be done. We're just going to have to work it and, you know, do it in a more fiscally responsible way and just spread it out over 10 years. But we need to start somewhere. Our schools, they're not getting any better.
Council President, one of your opponents, Brett Smiley, was on this program a few months back, and we asked, is it still possible Providence, despite all the steps taken, could be forced to file for bankruptcy in the coming years? And he said it's absolutely possible if you know the right decisions aren't made. What do you think? Is it still possible Providence could go bankrupt?
The city of Providence is on fragile ground fiscally, and we need to keep moving forward and be fiscally responsible on the decisions that we make, so we don't go back to the old way of doing things. So we obviously, listen, we're on fragile ground, so we continue to move forward and keep an eye on
Does
our
move
finances.
forward mean the potential tax increases next year, year after that?
I can't speak, I don't have the glass ball in front of me, but it's not my objective to raise taxes. But listen, we'll look at everything. But, we need to hold the line on taxes. People are just taxed out, even businesses. I'm a business owner. The commercial tax rate in our city, it's the highest in the country. We need, small businesses, we get hurt by that. We got small businesses in every neighborhood in the city of Providence, and they're the backbone of our communities, a lot of them.
Our colleagues Walt Buteau and Dan McGowan revealed that several city council members were absent more than 50% of the time from some subcommittee meetings, including one member who missed 100% of the education subcommittee meetings before resigning from the panel in 2012. How do you plan to address this? Would you support a policy to remove committee members if they don't show up?
Listen, the council works hard. We work as a whole. We have committees, we have council meetings, and a lot of our work is done inside City Hall. A lot of our work is done outside of City Hall. This is a 24/7 job. We've taken steps. We've taken some members already off the committees and replaced them with other members to put them on committees. So we're taking the steps to
Let me
to
ask
curb
you
that
another
problem.
way then. Was this acceptable to you? Is that all right?
It's never acceptable, but there's different circumstances for different council members, and I'm not going to get into each individual one, but I know when the council's there and we have to make the tough votes, every council member is there for the tough ones, and they work hard. But, our job, like I said, is not just in City Hall. It's out in the neighborhoods. It's on the street, neighborhood groups, senior centers. People who have problems, they call us. This is an ongoing thing. I don't look at it as a part-time job. I look at it as a full-time job, and I think a lot of other guys look at it the same way.
You worked with the mayor on what was certainly a landmark set of changes to the city pension fund, which is very, very underfunded. But new data out this week that shows the city's pension shortfall still $831 million after all the steps the council and Mayor Taveras took in his current and only term. In retrospect, do you think that the deal didn't get enough savings? Is the new mayor handing him an $831 million liability and the inability not to go back for savings? I mean, how are you going to manage that?
Listen, if we didn't make the changes that we made, it would have been worse. It would have been over $900 million. So these were tough decisions that we had to make. We had to deal with retirees. This is a problem. This didn't come on 2 or 3 years ago. This is a problem that stemmed from 20 years ago. So to solve this problem, it's going to take us another 20, 25 years to straighten it out. And we'll do it. We've talked with our actuaries, and we think we're on the right path, and this thing will work itself out. The most important thing is we have to make our contributions. And this council introduced ordinances that require those contributions to be made, because in the past sometimes they'd make 50% contribution, 70% contribution every time there was a shortfall. Right now, it's mandatory. You have to make the required contributions.
And you think $60-something million a year from the city budget into the pension fund is affordable?
Listen, right now, that's all we could afford. I mean, we've spread it out over 25 years, and we've been practical about it. And I think right now, you're going to have to wait a couple of years to really monitor it and see. I think 2 years in, it's not enough time to give it a history of how your investments are going.
The PEDP, it's a city-run program that gives out federal money as loans to startups. It's come under fire for mismanagement, and I know you've answered questions about this before, but look, you're running for mayor, and it's certainly going to come up, and it's a different take. At last check, there's still about $400,000 of debt on a loan that you and some others took out, I think more than 20 years ago now. Campaign finance reports show you loaned your campaign $250,000. Are you worried about the optics of that? That shouldn't you be using that money to pay back a taxpayer-backed loan?
That loan was taken before I became a partner in the corporation.
But you still have a responsibility.
I do have a responsibility, and we continue to pay on that loan. We could have walked away.
The loan is current.
The loan is current. We could have walked away from that loan. We went through some tough times. I mean, we were pioneers in downtown Providence. We're the first ones to put in residential living down there. And we continue to invest down there. And we did it at a time where you could roll a bowling ball down Westminster Street and there was nothing there. So I feel good about that because it accomplished what we had to accomplish. Thriving businesses. We have now 30 employees in the first floor of our building. So, I mean, we've taken the steps and it spurred economic development through the whole street. So, I mean, We continue to pay on that note, and that note was there for a reason, and it served a purpose. And like any other mortgage, we continue to make our monthly payments, we pay our taxes, and we're current on both of them.
I'd like to ask you a bigger picture question, Council President. You know, Providence obviously has been struggling with high unemployment. A lot of the biggest companies have left Providence that used to be headquartered here. When you look 5, 10, 20 years down the road at what you imagine Providence becoming, where do you see growth in Providence's economy coming from? What is it, the hospitals and colleges? Is it attracting new investment? Is it residential? What do you see as economic growth for Providence?
All different areas. We need to attract businesses. But we need to handle the businesses that we have here also. We have to give them the tools that they need to succeed. But we need to be a more friendly business city.
What does that mean?
That means, listen, we've started already by freezing the tax rate, okay?
The commercial property tax.
The commercial property tax rate. We started by doing that. Infrastructure. We started paving roads, okay? We need to look for ways to improve transportation. These are all things that are economic tools that attract businesses. They look at things like that. Digital permitting, we have that now. You can go online and you can get your permits and your licenses. There's, you know, any job under $100,000, it's 10 days you get your permit. Anything over it, take 30 days. So you're not getting bogged down from going from one department to another. So I mean, we're constantly taking steps to improve the business climate in the city of Providence, and we'll continue to make those steps, take those steps.
Do you support standardized tests as a graduation requirement?
I've never supported the kneecaps, but I think we need a high standard of education.
Well, you don't have to worry about the kneecap anymore. That's
listen,
going away. So what about standardized tests?
Standardized testing could be one tool. I agree with it. It could be one tool for the grade, but I think the problem today is we have to phase into that, because the kids that can't read today, it's not because of something that wasn't taught in the 9th or 10th grade. This is happening in the early years, 1st grade to 3rd grade. We need to put early investment in education from grades 1 to 3. So when a kid gets to the 3rd grade, he knows how to read grade level, because once that happens, you're reading to learn. And we have to phase into that. So if we're going to do standardized testing, that's the way you phase into it. I don't think teaching kids in the 9th grade or 10th grade how to take a test, it should be the sole purpose of graduating that child.
I want to ask you a question about politics. There are a lot of rumors, an increasing number, that Buddy Cianci might run for mayor too. Obviously, you're going to tell voters, vote for you, not Buddy, even if he's on the ballot. I understand that. But I'm wondering, what do you think it would mean for Providence if, I mean, the guy went to jail twice. What would it mean for the city if Buddy becomes the mayor again?
Listen, I'm only concerned about my race. I can't be concerned about Buddy. I wish him the best of luck, but I have to worry about my race.
Do you think he's going to get into the race?
I'm not going to comment on other candidates. I don't know, and I'm not.
Could you beat Buddy Cianci in a race?
Listen, I'm going to worry about my race. I'm going to worry about my campaign.
So you're not sure?
We're going to move forward. And I will tell you this, I will be the next mayor.
Do you support driver's license for undocumented immigrants?
Absolutely.
Why?
They need to get to work. Some of them are working. Some of them taking their kids to school. You know, they need insurance. I mean, they need to take a test. We want to make sure that they know, obviously know how to read and obey the street signs and the laws of the road. But yeah, I have no problem with that.
You've worked very closely, we've been saying, with Mayor Taveras. He's praised your work on the council, helping him with these financial challenges. I'm wondering, though, is there anything you would do differently from Angel Taveras? Of course, you're different men, but in terms of policies, is there anything you disagree with that he's done, or would you basically be a second term for Angel Taveras?
Listen, investing in schools, rebuilding our schools, that's something different, okay? Investing $250 million, creating 2,000 jobs. That's different.
Has he let the school system down in Providence?
I don't think he let the school system down. I think, listen, we had a $110 million deficit. So we had nothing else to focus on except straightening out that financial problem. And right now, the $50 million to make the schools warm, dry, and safe, that came out of the school board recently as a resolution to be supported by the school board and the mayor. So that's going to go to the council.
Sticking with education for a sec, do you think the Providence Teachers Union contract is going to be up soon? Do you think the teacher evaluation should be tied to standardized tests? Should that be any component of how teachers are evaluated in Providence?
I'm not sure yet. I haven't really thought about that. But I do know that, we need to give the teachers more autonomy so they can tailor their teaching needs to fit the needs of the children. We have to make schools more independent. I think the money needs to flow into the classrooms instead of middle management.
Are you worried, though, about teacher accountability? I mean, I've done stories on how many years it can take to terminate a teacher that has a real problem in the school system and it's described as onerous?
Listen, if there are some teachers that are not doing their job, it's going to show up in test scores or child's evaluation. So I mean, we do need to.
So
hold
you
them,
do want to tie test scores
we
to their...
need to hold them accountable for their. We need to hold them accountable, but I mean, whether it's to a test score or any other way of evaluating them, I mean, there can be different ways of evaluating them. If it's test scores, maybe that might work, but right now, I don't know if that's the answer. So, truthfully, I'd have to think about that.
Council President Michael Solomon, candidate for Mayor of Providence, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, and we tape on a Friday. Today is the 11th annual National Wear Red Day, hence the red ties. We want to remind you that heart disease is the number one, nice job, number one killer of women. For more information from the American Heart Association, go onto our website, WPRI.com. When we come back, Secretary of State and candidate for Lieutenant Governor Ralph Mollis. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my right, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi. And our guest for the second half is Secretary of State and candidate for Lieutenant Governor Ralph Mollis.
Good morning.
Welcome back to the show.
Great to be
Good
here.
to see you, Secretary.
You want to be Lieutenant Governor.
Yes,
Why?
I do. It's a position that invites vision, leadership, and the ability to tackle today's issues. And I've shown that government can make a difference in people's lives. Look at the Secretary of State's office. I mean, when you think 7 years back, quick start, master application, in online forms library. We thought outside the box. This is a position that invites thinking outside the box, and the issues of today I'm passionate about, and I'm looking forward to tackling it.
A lot of people would really disagree with your assessment of the Lieutenant Governor's office, that it's a position that invites, wholesale changes and you could create policy.
I think there's a big difference between perception and the reality in that office. I mean, look at Liz Roberts, 7 years ago, who thought of health care. She's tackled the issue of the day. Today's issues are filling the skills gap, being the voice of small business. I think there's a real divide between people and their government, and I think this position can bridge that divide and make a difference.
I guess the question is how, right? There's not a lot of power that comes with the Lieutenant Governor's office, and that's why, Bob Healy got 39% of the vote saying he'd get rid of it. How do you see concretely actually doing things as a Lieutenant Governor that could make an actual difference to people?
Two ways. First, as I mentioned earlier, thinking outside the box. So that is the second highest office in Rhode Island. And by developing a workforce development task force, by chair of SBAC, which is the Small Business Advisory Council, by being the voice of small business, you can make a difference in that job. Policies, programs, legislation. The second way, which I'm going to be fighting for and advocating for, is making it run with the governor. I'm hoping to put that on the ballot, or have it put on the ballot, and advocate like 25 other states do, having the governor and lieutenant governor run together and serve together. Advisory capacity, cabinet capacity. I think it answers the question of, is this job something that we need in Rhode Island? I think it is.
You're saying have them run together like a president, vice president do?
Oh, yes and no. So there'd be a primary for lieutenant governor, a primary for governor, and then the two victors would join together come September, and they'd run against each other, the Democrats and Republicans.
That's still a forced marriage, though, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it that way.
Isn't the president vice president? I mean, sometimes
they choose before.
The president picks his guy.
Usually picks somebody they ran against, though, to make sure that, and I think that in this case it may be forced, but I still think it's more effective if you have candidates from the same party.
Okay. Who's your running mate then? Who do you like for governor? Who are you going to support?
Well, it would be who wins the primary. So they'd answer the same question. So that's how.
Who do you want to run with, Ralph? If you could pick.
I think we have legitimately three fine candidates running on the Democratic Party, and I would look forward to serving with any of the three. I would have my own agenda, as I said, workforce development task force, filling the skills gap, being the voice of small business, bridging the divide between people and their government. I'd have my own platform, but I'd love to work with that governor and address their issues also.
As I pointed out in the open, you've been a political survivor. You've been in elected office for nearly 3 decades. What do you say to people who will just say you're a career politician and it really hasn't benefited the state all that much?
A couple of things, especially to the end. First, I've been in the private sector for 13 years. So I have 13 years of private sector experience before getting into the public sector. Second thing is, I was honored to serve as mayor of my hometown. When I look back on those 10 years, improved school system, balanced budgets, improved bond rating, community projects, Main Street revitalization. I look back on those 10 years with pride. These 7 years, look at the Secretary of State's office and what we've done to make it easier for business, both with e-commerce and one-on-one, face-to-face developing and dealing with businesses. So we've shown a track record of helping people, but I think if anything, it shows a passion. It shows a passion for public service. It shows a passion for making a difference. And I think Lieutenant Governor's office is perfectly suited for that passion. And I would say that I'm very proud of that. Very proud of my public service, a lifelong Rhode Islander, hopefully making a difference in people's lives. And I think Lieutenant Governor is one that you can truly do that.
You have an opponent, Dan McKee, the mayor of Cumberland, up there, all these people from northern Rhode Island getting into this race. Obviously, especially with an office, and people aren't sure necessarily what the lieutenant governor does. So, what would you say are the biggest differences? What would be different if you become lieutenant governor from if Dan McKee becomes the lieutenant governor?
I mean, I think that it's only February, so I think that'll all iron itself out from now through September. We have contrasting styles. I think we have different ideas on certain aspects of government, such as I believe he doesn't think the governor and lieutenant governor should run together. I don't want to speak for him; that's not fair. But I thought I heard that. Either on, I think I may have heard it here, I'm not sure. Also, the way we look at education is significantly different. And as mayor,
how so? That's a huge McKee thing.
Well,
so
while that may not be my platform as lieutenant governor, as mayor, our greatest responsibility is properly funding education. And so while I think charter schools, obviously have shown some success, the fact that we siphon money from public education to make them successful, the fact that we have another hierarchy of administration within just another school system, the fact that these students are chosen through lottery. I have a real concern over that. So if these charter schools are developing students that skilled students, why can't we put that inside the public schools? And that really goes into the whole skills gap that I've been talking about. That development task force that I want to put together will be higher ed, secondary ed, elementary ed, trades, philanthropic organizations. I think that we can develop our curriculum in the school system to graduate students ready for the workforce. And if the charter schools are doing that, it's taking money away from our public schools.
Mr. Secretary, last time I interviewed you, it was over the hiring of somebody when you were mayor of North Providence, a 52-year-old as a firefighter. He subsequently went out on a tax-free disability pension, and records show he was out sick or injured nearly half the time he was there. Yes. That story got a lot of attention. You had time to think about it, and I'm guessing you probably looked into it a little bit more than the day I interviewed you. So. Have you had any change of heart or any new thoughts on that?
No, I mean, you and I had some very frank conversations on that, and I would still look back and say that my position is the same, that back in that time period we had a process. You had to pass a physical agility test, a written test, an oral board interview, a fire academy. This individual passed all that process. He did that sometime in his 40s. By law, we then ranked them as to how they finished. By the time he got hired, he was 52 years old. And as I mentioned to you then, looking back now, playing Monday morning quarterback, should an age limit have been discussed during the process? Absolutely. Ironically, only 2 communities, I believe, actually have an age limit. And to discriminate someone who passed everything and then not hire him because of his or her age would be age discrimination. So again, the buck stops here, but looking back, and as I mentioned to you, I think that when we put together that process, and we had a committee that did that, an age limit should have been discussed, no question.
On abortion, 2 of the most powerful Democrats in the State House from North Providence, Don Ruggiero and Frank Chacon, are both staunchly against abortion rights. Do you consider yourself pro-life or pro-choice?
I consider myself personally pro-life.
Personally pro-life? Yes. Would you want to implement pro-life policies or pro-choice policies?
That wouldn't be part of my platform to implement pro-life policies, no. But I am personally pro-life. There's a number of reasons for that. Never been one to advocate for it, never been one to testify on it. It's just a personal situation with me, and that's something that I've always been. But I've never advocated that for either pro-life or pro-choice.
You support eliminating the state's $500 minimum tax on corporations and lowering the sales tax.
Yes.
Why those? Have you done research on that? And there's some call to eliminate the sales tax altogether. What are your thoughts on that?
A couple of things. As co-chair of the Small Business Advisory Council, I get the opportunity to listen to small business every month. And they have the solutions to a lot of today's problems. So 2 things I want to talk about what you just mentioned. The minimum corporate tax is one that no matter what the gross receipts are of a business, they have to pay $500. Mm-hmm. And obviously we all know that the first few years of a business are its most difficult years. So if we could eliminate that corporate tax for the first 3 years, we may actually help success. In addition, the sales tax. I still can't understand how a state so geographically small, with 20 minutes from our neighboring states, has a sales tax almost 1% greater than our neighboring states. And I think if we lower it to at least where they are, we will at the very worst be revenue neutral. Reason is that for every 1% that we lose for someone that buys something in Rhode Island that would have done anyway at 7%, we gain 6% from the person who may have crossed the border to get the high ticket item. So I just don't understand how we think we can compete with our neighboring states. And this is a small business issue, which I will advocate for, being the voice of small business as Lieutenant Governor. I don't understand how we have a sales tax that's greater than our neighbors.
Go ahead,
Very
Ted.
briefly, your potential successors for Secretary of State have criticized the state's photo voter ID law. You're a rare Democrat who supports that. Do you still support it, and why?
Absolutely.
30 seconds.
Absolutely. It has become a national model. Nationally, I have some concerns about voter ID. Here in Rhode Island, we've taken an issue that I think should be embraced, that is a common sense issue, and we've made it so that no one gets disenfranchised, giving free IDs to people who need them. But I think we need to move forward with that. I will fight for that in this General Assembly session, and I think we'll still see it in 2014.
We love us some debates on Eyewitness News. We do a lot of them. Do we have your commitment here now that you will debate whoever it is, of course, Mayor McKee from Cumberland?
Absolutely.
For this
Look forward
position.
to that.
All right. Our first half guest was City Council President Michael Solomon, Secretary of State Ralph Mollis. If you missed any of it, online, WPRI.com. For Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.